If you want to fast forward to Nick giving his explanation about why he quit the Adam Friedland Show, you can fast forward to that. I'll put the timestamp down below. And be sure to subscribe to Jim Norton's podcast. I'm not trying to steal his content here. It's just that unexpectedly, when I was listening to it, they brought up a point that I think is becoming increasingly relevant to comedians. Something that I know I've been talking about for a long time, and I'm hearing more and more comics talk about from all degrees of success over the last, 3 or 4 months in particular. I've been hearing about, and that's basically that the job of a comedian used to be the funniest person on stage or in the room, or the funniest joke writer, or the funniest performer, and ideally having those two things combined together. And you would do that by getting on stage as much as possible and writing as much as possible. The problem is now you're also expected to market everything that you do and market it more than you've ever had to in the past. And that is being valued more than what you can actually do on stage or the jokes that you write on the page, because comedy clubs are businesses and they want to know how many people you can put in the seats. And if you have a massive online following, that's going to dictate that perhaps more reliably than whether or not you're the funniest comedian or the best joke writer. I've actually had people who work at clubs who said that they used to send recruiters out to open mics to try and grow the local scene's talent, and that is pretty much no longer a practice. They just look at your social media, how many followers you have. It also used to be that you would have a local MC and a middle act, or a feature from the local scene that would be on the show with a national touring headliner. But now a lot of headliners, they're bringing their own opening acts, so that's also cutting local talent out from getting gigs. And there's just only so much time in the day, and you never feel like it's enough. I know I've been at it for way too long and have not had any professional success as a comedian. I can't pay my rent with, the little money I've made doing comedy. Uh, but just the fact that I'm even making this video, you're expected to, if you can, daily put out TikTok sketches, crowd work clips, if not that weekly, but you're doing all the editing, and it's not just getting up on stage and performing it or writing it and recording it. It's coming home and editing it. Then it's figuring out what's then making the best thumbnail image in Photoshop and thinking about keywords to put in and adding chapters into the YouTube videos, and it just goes on and on. And that's in addition to perhaps having a podcast, and you need to manage, your Spotify and your Apple Podcast accounts. And do you get a pro thing? Do you have a Patreon where actually now you're doing 2 podcasts a week and you have bonus content for that? And the idea was that these were things that were going to bring fans to your creative output that you really cared about, which is the comedy, right? Every comedian hates using the word art, but for the sake of this, I'm going to say for your artistic output. But now you're spending so much time in the marketing end of it and making that as artistic as possible, that the actual thing that you're trying to sell ultimately, which is your comedy, is the thing you end up working on the least. And even if you have success, and Nick talks about this in the clip, I'll put it at the end. Nick talks about this, like, even if you have success and you do a podcast, and I mean an episode of a podcast, or let's say 30 episodes of a podcast, and your goal is to get to this end of marketing your actual comedy stuff, it doesn't matter that you had 30 great episodes, because guess what? As soon as you post that, the clock is ticked and you now have less than 7 days to make sure you do it all over again and get another one up, or less than 24 hours, get another clip up. And there's no end to it, right? He uses the analogy of being a chef who never completes the meal. You're just constantly having to add more and more ingredients. And when you feel like you're at the behest of the algorithm, you're like, okay, I'm not proud of what I'm doing. Like, speaking for myself, I put so many TikTok things out through the years. I treat like TikTok as a little bit more informal than Instagram. Or like I try to get on a trend and I'm just doing stuff that I'm like, it's okay, right? It's like C minus quality. But if it's gonna but the thing is, you'll put something out that's like C minus quality that maybe whatever you spent an hour or 2 hours on versus something you could have spent 1 or 2 months on, and they'll get the equal amount of likes. So you're like, why am I even bothering putting out an amazing product or an artistic product or something that I'm proud of when it doesn't seem to make a difference or find like the ecosystem in which it's going to be valued. And this feels like a uniquely thing very unique to comedians. Like I don't know authors that are expected, if you could have just 3 very good novels that you put out in your lifetime and you're an author for your lifetime and no one expects anything more of you. But with comedy you could be doing it every day for 20 years and then you stop doing it for a year and people are like, oh, he's not a comedy. He used to do comedy. There's no other, you could, if you're a musician and you have one hit album, you're a musician for the rest of your life and you're not expected to put out a hit song every day. But with the content, ecosystem and what people crave, it seems like there's just no end to it. And we're feeling that pressure. And as comedians, we're all competing with each other because like, well, they're doing it and they're getting booked, not necessarily because they're a better comedian, but because they have a bigger draw because they're bowing to the algorithm gods and the demands of the clubs and so forth. So um it ends up hurting everybody. It's not what we ultimately want to do. That's not what we got into this for, is to be podcasters and do, TikTok trends and whatever. Try to sit down and write 10 witty tweets every day. Like that was always a means to an end, but it's like now the means have become the end, and that's not what anybody wanted. And it's not ultimately going to deliver a bigger product for you, a better product for you guys. Like, right? There's a lot of criticism of hugely popular comedians right now, and I'm not here to comment on them or anyone specific, but like there is a sense that like the most popular, biggest draw comedians right now, that their product has suffered because their focus is so much on the other marketing aspects of what they do. And that's fine for them because they're multi millionaires and they're making money doing that. But most of us are just doing because we're trying to see if something sticks just so that we can hope that we get booked in a club and, be able to pay a fraction of our rent with a night's work. So anyway, when Nick was talking about this and why he quit or is quitting the Adam Friedland Show, that resonated with me. And I know it resonates with a lot of comedians, from his level of success down to people like myself recording on a laptop in their bed in their pajamas. So anyway, I'll let you hear it from Nick himself, but I think this is very insightful, and I think you're going to hear more and more comedians talking about this, and I think uh something's got to give, because unless we're just moving into a world of recording. That's it. The other thing, comedian, what does that mean anymore? It's like it used to be you craft stand up or you write like a really good sketch and you record that, and like sure, that's still there, but now it can be like a guy faking a prank video with his girlfriend where he shaves off her eyebrows, or she wakes up and gets a fucking whipped cream pie in the face, and it's all staged, and people, viewers, are just as satisfied with that dopamine hit as they are with like a well-crafted, funny 90-second short film that people spent 5 months on. So what do we do here? I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I'm gay. All right.
Your show's a hit.
Adam? No, it's not. Yeah, no, it's. I mean, sometime when it comes out, people like it. But
do you guys do it every week?
The podcast, we ended up having to continue to podcast, because here's the problem: is that we did like becoming a podcaster or an influencer or whatever you want to call it. We were happy to catch that wave when it happened.
Yeah.
But then you fall into the trap of being like a content creator, which means I need to have something out every week, which was fine during Cumtown. I could do that for a couple of years, but I always like projects to have a beginning and an end.
Yeah.
And then Cumtown ended, and then we wanted to do this new thing, but it was never really feasible to do it exactly the way like we kind of wanted to every week. And so it was like, maybe we'll do some things that are like a proof of concept and then try to sell it. I don't know anything about fucking selling a TV show. And then there were strikes, so that never happened. And then we fell back into podcasting just because it's like we have an audience that pays for, something.
Yeah.
And then it's just, okay, well, here I am podcasting again, but in a room that costs, like $8,000 a month. It's like, it's just, it felt like, kind of like falling sort of backwards. So I have to rethink my whole career in its entirety because I've made enough money to be comfortable, I guess.
Yeah.
But I would prefer what's creatively fulfilling is to figure out how to go back to working on a per project basis, not on you got to get something out this week because, I don't like that.
Do you get bored if it's a success? Because everything you do is funny, and you're...
No, it has nothing to do with the success or that it's boring. It's like things need to have a beginning and an end.
You want to know when it's
Imagine if you were a chef and like you cooked to no end. That you were making a meal and your job was to continually add ingredients into the pot and nothing ever came out and it was never finished. It's like that would drive you fucking insane.
So you like to know.
And
know
that's what being a podcaster is.
when it's done.
Yeah, I want something to be done.
And then
there's a goal in mind. I'm making something. One thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you like the idea of like getting all the when you were looking for all the furniture. And I remember when you were doing that, you were sending me pictures of like the set and all this stuff.
Yeah.
You like the process of I'm birthing this thing, it's happening, and then it's gonna fucking die.
Yeah, and then from the beginning to the get go, it was like there was like a little carve out, like a place where I could play around with like fucking around with cameras and figuring out how to shoot stuff and learn that because like ideally I'd like to you always how can you level up? It's like 10 years ago all I could do is write a blog or record something or maybe draw something. But, if I've done well enough now that I can get somebody to give me some money to shoot something, I want to know that I can at least execute if that happens. And so that was like, this show was just sort of a playground for me to do that. And at the same time, Adam did want to interview people. And so it was like, okay, well, we can make this both. It doesn't have to be a format you can sell anybody because it's ours and we have the money to do it. So, it was kind of like just getting it in place, getting it where it's like this can continue on kind of indefinitely. But it was always, I imagined that I would, either move on to something else, once it got to the point where it kind of is now, frankly. So for me, I guess I gotta, figure out what's next. And it could be nothing. It could be that now Stav said the most, I don't know if it would be profound really, but,
poignant?
Yeah, not even, there's nothing poignant about it. One time he goes, one time we said, but he goes, it was when we started making money with Cumtown. He's like, yeah, now basically we get to be our own rich parents. And that's like kind of the way he thought about it. And he was wise. He invested his money in, shooting a special by himself, self-producing it and all that. I was like, I'm not going to be dumb. I'm buying a bunch of fucking weird Chinese cryptocurrencies. And, yeah.
How much? What question are you sickest of? Because I get them from O&A and all that stuff. There's got to be a question that you're like, ugh, every time.
No, I don't get any questions. I'm pretty much isolated. Sorry, we kind of derailed things.
No, it's fine. Who cares? Do people ask you about like, well, come to, or they ask you these questions? You're like,
no, at shows, after shows, people are usually pretty like nice, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not. I don't like the phenomena of being a public figure. So it's not any kind of question or any criticism that I may see. It's just that like the attention exists at all.
Could you go see yourself just producing stuff and going on and do it without being in front of the camera like that would be sort of ideal. What do you want to do next?
I have a couple of things. I have things I'm working.
Is it in video or audio only?
Oh, yeah. It would be movies.
Okay.
Yeah.
I admire you because